and welcome back to my exploration through the Star Wars Expanded Universe, now redubbed by Disney Legends. So today, I have for you the Krytos Trap, the third book in the X-Wing Rogue Squadron series, which has been progressively, as I continue to read it, become one of my favorite EU series of all time, at least so far. This is above, especially after reading this one. We still have the fourth one to go, but I can always say without a shadow of a doubt that these, because as I said in the previous review, it goes, Darth Bane and Darth Plagueis are like my S tier. Like these are, I mean, nothing's perfect, but it's reaching there. Like in my opinion, they were so good. And then the 80s Lando and Han trilogy were like a B for me. Like they were good. Just good. Great. Good times. But the A.C. Crispin trilogy was like an A. Because it was just fantastic, I felt, all the way through. And I would put Rogue Squadron series also in A tier, but it's for me above the Han Solo trilogy that we got. So, first things first, they think Cornhorn, however you say his name, they think he's dead. So, that's a whole thing for like half the book till he comes back. And the virus that was talked about in the last book has now started to infect people on Coruscant, like the aliens on Coruscant. So it's something they gotta fix, and they're putting Tycho on trial for betraying the Republic and everything. Though Wedge believes without a shadow of a doubt that Tycho is innocent. And when I was reading this book, or when I was listening to it, at this point I didn't know whether or not he was innocent or not. So I had a couple notes, because Wedge mentioned Hoth, mentioned Endor, mentioned Alderaan. Because Tycho's from Alderaan. And I believe if I was, reading into it correctly, he was a part of the Empire in some way, shape, or form. And then Alderaan happened and he resigned. But then he also helped in the Battle of Hoth and helped in the Battle of Endor. So for me right there, that made it seem highly unlikely that he would be a traitor, just from being in those two important battles alone. It just didn't make sense. Plus the Alderaan thing. And again, they mentioned Iron Fist. This, I think it's a ship. But I know there's a novel titled Iron Fist. So every time I see the name now, I just make a little note about it. And I have another note where the politics is just so good. I feel like that's one of the biggest reasons why people like Game of Thrones and stuff. I've only seen seasons 1 and 2, so I don't know everything about it. But I know that people really dug that show. And I think a big part of it was the politicking, or why people liked. I don't know if people liked it once Kevin Spacey left, but House of Cards was the whole thing's politics. Or Deep Space Nine was very political too. Not every episode, but there were a lot of political episodes. Anyway, so I just mentioned that it was really good because I love it, and it's the same sort of thing that made me love Darth Plagueis. And despite what Wedge is saying about Tycho, it seems that the Republic, the New Republic, regardless, wants to put Tycho on trial, because if they don't, it's going to look really bad for the New Republic, because an alien's going to be like, why aren't you putting him on trial? Just because he's a human? Or something like that. So it's a whole big spiel, big deal that's going on that's affecting everything with that. As I said, the politics. Of course, the book will explain it better than I can, but I wrote down that Cornhorn is super resilient. Cornhorn, whatever. Because, he was getting beat up and stuff, and refusing to talk and stuff like that. I mean, I know that's like a typical thing in movies and stuff, but I don't know. Just he seems like a younger guy, and the fact that he's resisting is, I don't know, just speaks to his integrity. But with the revelations we have later in this book, kind of makes sense why he's so good. My next note was this: I really like Cornhorn. I've always liked him since the first book, but he's really been growing on me, and he's probably he's one of my favorite characters now. There's the big three from the movies, but he's really been growing on me, and I really like him. And then later on in the book, these are spoilers. If you don't want them, you should leave. I mean, I guess, I don't know, kind of spoilerish. I don't know. Just warning you, possible spoilers. If I've intrigued you enough already, these books are fantastic. They're phenomenal. Some of my favorite Star Wars books, some of my favorite books in general. Like I'm really fell in love with this series so far, and I still have one more to go. And I know there's other books in the Rogue Squadron series, but as for this particular storyline with Bacta and the virus and everything, this is the next book, the Bacta War, is going to be the finale to that story arc. Like, we might have more stories with these characters, but as for this big arc, it will end in the next story. But yeah, I recommend, at the very least, you get the 4. Actually, in Rogue Squadron, Wedge's Gamble, Krytos Trap, and even though I haven't read it yet, Back to War, because I know it's going to be good, because these 3 were good. I don't know how all of a sudden the 4th one would be terrible, but I'll be surprised if it is. But yeah, spoilers now, kind of. So if you don't want those, go. So Cornhorn escapes, wherever he's being held up, because at this point we're not really sure. And before he escapes, he finds out that maybe, or that Tycho is innocent. And then he escapes on the shuttle thing or whatever. And when he finally gets out of the shuttle, he's in this old Jedi museum. And I thought that was really cool. Like, just like envisioning that. And one of the most interesting parts for me, I mean, of course, the big revelation, which I'll get to, is that all these statues and stuff are defaced. Like, they have maybe their eyes gouged out or an arm chopped off. And, Cornhorn's thinking, like, who could have hoarded this? Like, wouldn't the Emperor be pissed if he found out? Or whatever? Like, who's powerful enough to do this and to hide all this here? But it's not any Moff. It's not any, like, admiral in the Empire fleet. It's the Emperor himself who had this hidden away. This Sith Lord. Petty enough, though, to keep this stuff down there and, maybe when he gets pissed off, burn a hole in one of their eye sockets. I don't know, just knowing that the Emperor had this secret, museum with a bunch of Jedi stuff, and that he would go out of his way to deface all of the statues it was interesting to me. I think it, subtly enough, builds more into Palpatine's character. And then, of course, it's kind of inferred, it's not exactly said till the very end, but he sees one of these podium things and sees a guy with the same sort of medallion coin thing that he has. And then, of course, Cornhorn gets a lightsaber and fends off a couple dudes, and then keeps the lightsaber with him. We also learned that Horn never left Coruscant. So whatever he escaped from is on Coruscant. And then a bunch of other stuff happens. Again, read the book. It's worth your time. I'm just talking about stuff that I particularly wrote down as worth noting. We learn that there is a super star destroyer underneath Coruscant. Again, another thing that Palpatine did. just in case. And, you know, this is going to be huge spoilers for future stuff. Even though I haven't read it, I just know about future events because, you know, I started looking into the EU and there's just stuff I found out. The Yusong Vong War that will happen in the New Jedi Order. I believe one of the things that held them back was the Death Star from invading. It's because they knew about how powerful that weapon was. And what I hear a lot is that people complain about the super weapons that will be going on later on after the Thrawn trilogy. Like, there's a lot of super weapons. But here's how I reconcile that, and here's how I make it justifiable. Even though I haven't read it yet, when I get to it. Here's the thing. Think about this. The Emperor, he's evil, of course, but he knows about this other threat in this distant galaxy, these Yusong Vong. He knows about them, right? So he has the Death Star as a political and intimidating weapon against rebels and the entire galaxy. But then it's also a big Batman beacon sign to any other galaxy not to mess with him. If that wasn't enough, he has other super weapons that can also cause major damage. And as we go after the Thrawn trilogy, our heroes will progressively get rid of every single one. Or at least most of them. So when you get rid of all the stuff that would intimidate a group like the Yusong Vong to not get involved, you give them the perfect opportunity to finally decide, now's the time. Because everything that might have stopped us before is gone now. So I just thought that would be an interesting point to bring up. But anyway, of course you have Palpatine thinking super million steps ahead all the time because he is the greatest villain of all time. So having a Star Destroyer underneath Coruscant is brilliant. And then, of course, you know, Isgard uses this for herself. And then the Star Destroyer is named the Lusenka, and it escapes Coruscant, which means we'll have to deal with that in the final book. And then the only other note I have is at the very end, we get to see Luke. Now, of course, he's just a cameo because these books aren't about the main three. I mean, we had Leia a couple times, but it makes sense for her to be there because the New Republic, political stuff, that's what she does. She's just like her mother, Amidala. So it makes sense that she would, you know, be at least somewhat a part of that, you know, along with Mon Mothma and all that. But we get to see Luke there for a second, and he knows about that. He knows we get the big revelation about Cornhorn's family, and we know that Cornhorn is Force sensitive and that he could probably become a Jedi, and Luke even offers him that. But Cornhorn refuses, only because he has a bunch of obligations that he feels that he must complete. Though I have no doubt in my mind, one, because I already know what will happen somewhat, but two, because it would just make sense, I feel, that later on he would go and join up with Luke. At his academy, which he hasn't made yet because that hasn't happened yet. But I don't know. I thought it was really nice to see Luke. You know, it's been a couple years since what was it? Since the book, the Truth at Bakura. Since it's been like 3-5 years since then, something like that. So it's good to see him. He's a little bit older now. Definitely seems to be full in that Jedi role at this point. I mean, I know he was in episode 6 too, but I'm just saying. But yeah, that's pretty much all my notes. I just have to say, this series has been so fantastic, and I've enjoyed going through it. I have to admit, like, going through Allegiance and Choices of One was such a drag, and it was really difficult. And it wasn't that I wasn't enjoying it, because there were parts I really did enjoy, but I found myself just checking the time and seeing what page I was on to know how much longer I had to go through that. And I didn't like having that feeling. I don't even gotta worry about that with this series. Like, I never check the time. I never check what page I'm on, or if I'm listening to an audiobook, you know, how far it is in, because I don't need to, because it's engaging and I'm entertained, which is all I can really ask for. And so, yeah. I mean, I'm still going to read Allegiance and Choices 1 because I spent my hard-earned cash on it. So whenever I go through the entire EU, I will read it again. Dreading it, however, but it's just, I don't like, because I force myself to read things in chronological order or watch things in chronological order. It's just how I am. So even if I didn't particularly like something, I'd watch it just because it came before, and also because I paid for it. Whereas if I didn't pay for it and I was listening to it somewhere, I might skip it. But anyway, this series has been fantastic. I love the idea of having main characters. Yes, now that we know that Cornhorn is force sensitive, but he's no Luke yet. He's not any Jedi yet. He doesn't even use the Force, so I don't think that will affect the next book or any of the other books till he decides to train with Luke. Doesn't mean he's a little bit more lucky. Sure, but he was already more lucky than everyone else in this series because he's the main character of this series. So he has that plot armor. So the Jedi thing just might give him an in-story excuse for his luck and not death. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it. I love these characters. I love Wedge. I love Cornhorn. Even though I'm butchering his name every time I say it. I love the side characters, even though it's hard for me to remember their name, except for Gavin Darklighter, because it's a cool name. Everyone else is kind of hard to remember. But yeah, love it. I can't wait to read the Back to War, see what that's all about, and give you a review for it. Thank you for sticking with me. If you enjoyed this video, thumbs ups are always appreciated. And read these books too. And if you read them afterwards, write a comment. Let me know what you thought about it. I'd love to know how you thought about it. Even if you have a different opinion, I'd still love to know. If you've read these books before because you're older than me and you've been an EU fan way longer than I've been, then let me know what you thought about it. I'd love to know. And yeah, just continue to join me on this journey of experiencing the EU. With the disappointment I have with the sequels, it's nice to have this feeling of, yes, Star Wars. And especially during this whole time, if you're in the future, we had a certain virus. I won't get into the name because then trouble happens, but you know what it is. And this has been a way for me to escape reality for a bit, to escape the boredom of modern day, being stuck at home because it's hard to find work right now, or at least it has been for me. And it's a way for me to just escape reality and enjoy some Star Wars, and it's been great. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.